Very few people have heard the story of Majed El Shafie, a native Egyptian and former Muslim who was hung on a cross and sentenced to die for his outspoken devotion to Christianity. When I recently interviewed Majed on my podcast called Maybe God, I was honestly surprised when it quickly became one of our most popular videos of all time. The views and comments continue to pour in, so I wanted to take some time today to unpack why this testimony has resonated with so many people and what we all can learn about Islam from a man who grew up in that faith. Now, it's also worth mentioning today that Majed is a human rights advocate and founder of One Free World International, which is an organization that rescues people from religious persecution. So, here we go. What do you make of Islam now that you've had some time to reflect on your conversion to Christianity and how this worldview differs from the one you were raised with? What do you think Muhammad stood for that was wrong? What do you think Islam just misses the point about?
If I may answer you without politically correctness, Pastor, and please accept my apology.
I love that.
Because politically correctness is the very cancer in our North American society today.
I agree.
There is two campaigns in this world. God's campaign and the devil campaign. If you are not of God, you are from the devil campaign. The philosophy of Islam, their false prophet, the crimes that they are committing today, the violation against minorities, the persecution to the Christians and other minorities, the terrorism that we see today, that's all nothing but the fruit. In my humble opinion, you can only know the tree from its fruit. And if the fruit is rotten, the roots is rotten.
Mm-hmm. What do you say to people, just to sort of play devil's advocate a bit, what do you say to, there are Christians I know who say, well, we're just worshiping the same God in different ways, that, yes, Islam has issues with terrorism and radical elements, but so has Christianity throughout the past. And if we use the standard of judging a tree by its fruits, then there have been times in Christian history where the fruits haven't been good. So what's the difference really? What's your response as someone who's lived in both worlds?
I understand why some Christians would say about history, because we have the history of Crusaders, and I understand, and the Crusaders commit many crimes. I got that, using the name of God per se. But I need to tell you something. Here is the difference. The Crusaders that commit crimes in the history, 500, 600 years ago, they was not a good believers. They did not follow the Bible. They did not obey the Bible about love and forgiveness. But the Muslims that committing crime today, they are actually following the Quran.
Got it.
They are actually
it's obeying
their prophet. So yes, as a Christians, we are human. Of course, we make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. We are human, of course. But that have nothing to do with the foundation of our belief. And I don't believe in religion. I believe in relationship with God, 100%. So, as a Christians, yes, we make mistakes. But as a foundation of the faith is very different between Christianity and Islam. And if we had the same God, they will be worshiping Christ today, not just as a prophet. They will be worshiping him. So the Christians that they believe that we have the same God, they are or lying or believe the lie that the society been telling them. But in reality, there is only one God, and his name is Jesus Christ.
What was it specifically about Jesus or about the Bible that led to your ultimate conversion, your decision?
Many people will ask me what the difference between Islam and Christianity. And there is between 300 to 400. I teach that in universities. There is between 300 to 400 difference between Islam and Christianity. But I will answer you with one different. One. I will choose one. The God of Islam sent his people to die for him. But the God of Christianity sent his only son to die for us. The sacrifice, the forgiveness, and the ultimate, unlimited, unconditional love that we see from Christ every day. Nobody can deny his love and his existence.
Wow. Look, agree with him or not, you have to appreciate his courage and plain spokenness in this world that is so awash in political correctness, as he identified early on. That is part of the cancer that's plaguing our Western civilizations, is just this overriding politeness that infiltrates and infects us and really holds us back from speaking plainly and truthfully with each other. I still feel that all the time. I used to be way more politically correct than I am now, but I still feel like I have this filter in my brain that the Matrix has kind of given me.
The Matrix is everywhere.
Well, Majed is clearly not plagued with that same problem as he says it like he sees it. And I appreciate that. I understand why people find his views unsettling, because basically he says, if you're not of God or for God, then you are against God and of the devil. And he's basically throwing Islam in the latter category. But look, he's a man who's lived in both worlds. As an adult, he has been an avowed Muslim in Egypt, and he's been following Jesus for decades now throughout the world. And so he's seen the insides and inner workings of both worldviews. And he just rejects this notion that's so popular today, that all religions basically are different paths to the same destination, that they're all different, views, but they're leading to the same place. And I think we should all be willing to reject that. I think it's silly to say that competing and conflicting worldviews are actually just sort of secretly saying the same things, because that can't be logically the case. And you have, in the case of Christianity and Islam, some very different ideas. You've got some similarities for sure. I mean, many people will point out the fact that, Islam has a lot of adjacent characteristics to the Judeo-Christian worldview, claims to worship the same God. Allah is etymologically just God. It's the same one God that we worship, ostensibly. The same. It's rooted in the same tradition, got a lot of the same figures. Even Jesus is exalted to a certain extent in Islam, but he's not the Messiah. He's not uniquely God incarnate. He's not, anything unique or special at all. He's a prophet that points to Muhammad. And so that's a very direct claim about Jesus that directly contradicts the Christian claims about Jesus. And so at the end of the day, we know one has to be right or more right than the other. Christians believe we're right about Jesus, and we've got this 66 book volume set of scriptures written over 3,000 years time by 40 different authors in 3 different continents and 3 different languages, all attesting to this one idea that Jesus is uniquely God incarnate, God in the flesh, come to save us, and that we should worship him. We're left with this decision that Majed articulated very well. It's really one or the other. Which is more true? Which speaks more clearly to what we believe about God? And at the very end, I mean, how better could you make a point than what Majed said, which is, in Christianity, you have a God who came to die for us. In Islam, you have a God who sends us to die for him. And which speaks more to a loving, all benevolent, all powerful creator worthy of our worship? I think the answer is clear. And I think we should stop pretending like these are just two cousins that mostly get along and mostly say the same things. We do not. You see the evidence on the ground throughout the world, as hard as it is to talk about, of the treatment of women and girls, children, really, girls and boys, in many, if not most, Muslim majority nations. You see the treatment of LGBTQ people and other minority groups and dissenting groups in Muslim majority countries. It's vastly different than what you find in Christian majority countries. And I think that's because the foundations of these religious worldviews are vastly different. And those are things we should be willing to talk about. It sort of made its way into the mainstream conversation when we had the, I believe, ludicrous protests of feminists for Gaza, feminists for Hamas. You had queers for Palestine. All those things that seem to be sentimentally good, but logically lacking, to say the least. Because if those people protesting were to protest in what they were wearing, believing the things they believe in the places they claim to be protesting for, they would not be tolerated. because the worldview that they claim to be advocating for would not have them.
First of all, the Palestinian people accepts any support.
بس دعم هيك لا.
But a support like this, no.
Oh, why not?
ليش لا?
لأنه بعرف بس غلط الاشي.
Because I don't know, because it's just wrong.
And so I think these are important, stark differences between the Christian worldview and the dominant Muslim worldview. That's not to say that we don't all know and love good, honorable, neighborly Muslims, because we do. And I think that's, if I could have nudged Majed a little further in this part of the interview, I wish I would have said more about distinguishing between the foundations of the religion and the people and individuals practicing that religion, because obviously not all Muslims are of the devil or evil, or just because they're Muslim, they're bad people any more than the rest of us are bad. So that's an important distinction to make. Otherwise, I think Majed's point's well taken. In the next part of the interview, I asked him about sort of what he suffered, what he endured because of his conversion to Christianity while living in Egypt. And that's what we'll look at next. What happened after you went public as a Christian, or after you were outed? What was your family's response? What was the government's response? How much trouble did you get into?
In August 15, 1998, I was arrested 1:30 in the morning. I was in my office. I was arrested. 5 soldiers, 2 officers, they came, they arrested me. They took me to police station. It's called the Zogli police station. It's behind the Egyptian parliament. They told me, we know everything about you. We know what you did, but we don't know the rest of your team. I told them, I don't know what team and what organization, and if you know everything about me, why are you asking me?
Real quick, the team he's talking about is the movement of Christianity that he was a part of after converting. Like 24,000 Egyptians converted to Christianity as part of this movement that he was helping to lead. So that's who the interrogator was asking about.
They told me, you want to play tough? We can play tough. I told them, tough is my middle name. You don't need to worry about it.
Dirty Harry.
I was taken to Abu Zabad prison, and for the people who doesn't know what is that, is what we call in Egypt hell on earth. And you will not see this information on the CNN or BBC. 25% from the space of this prison is underground.
Look at his eyes. It's like he's seeing it again.
And that's where they torture you. And I was there for 7 days. And every day is a higher level of torture if you didn't speak. So day number 1, they shave the hair of my head. They put my head in cold and hot water. So the system here that they would torture you for 3-4 hours, give you rest between 20 minutes, 3-4 hours, rest 20 minutes, and they carry on the rest of the day. The officers that they are torturing you, they are not, you cannot see their faces. They always wearing a mask. They call each other by numbers, not by names. So you don't know their names, you don't know their face. They put me back again to my cell in day number 1. They told me, tell us the name of your friends. I told them, quite honestly, I enjoy the cold and hot water. And I'm very handsome without hair. Pastor, I kept the style a little bit, as you can see.
It looks good. It looks good.
And day number 2, they hang me upside down. They burn me with cigarettes. They beat me with everything in their hands. I couldn't remember much from day number 2. I remember that they was grabbing me from my leg back again to the room, dragging me to my cell, and I can see the traces of blood behind me. And they put me in the cell, and they told me, do you know what will be your torture next day if you didn't speak? And I said, I'm listening. They said, we release 3 dogs to attack you. These are dogs trained. They are normally German Shepherd or Doberman. They are trained by the authority, K9 unit, basically to torture people. Next morning, I woke up. Did you ever wake up in the morning, you didn't know if that's a good news or bad news? My room is very dark, so I found the door open, and there was a red light at the corridor. So the light was shining inside my room. And I can hear another door open on the other side, and I can see a shadow of 3 dogs getting closer and closer to my room. and you can hear their noise. You know, when you have big dogs, the way they breathe, the way that. So I went and I sit down in the corner. I put my back between two walls, and I sit down in a way that I protect my back. I put my knee on my chest, and I covered my face with my own hand. What you're trying to do is, or what I was trying to do, that I was trying to expose the outside flesh to the damages or to the injuries, and instead of the neck, the heart, the face. So you try to protect your important organs, per se.
Sure.
Now, we don't learn this in the school. This comes to you as something, survivor mechanism. So I went and I sit down this way, and I can hear the dogs getting closer and closer until I know that they are in my room. I can hear them breathing. I can feel them. And I waited for pain. I waited for agony. And as I'm not feeling anything, I start to remove my hand a little bit to see what's happening. And that's what I saw, Pastor. The 3 dogs sitting around me, none of them moved one single step.
Wow.
Not one
Sounds
step.
familiar.
So the soldiers and the officers, the soldiers and the officers took the belt and started to beat the dogs to attack, to beat them.
Wow.
And I remember, and I don't want to get emotional, I remember I'm looking at the feet of this dog, his feet. And from the strength of their beating, the dog trying to hold on the ground so he does not lose his balance. And I'm thinking, what's making this dog not obeying? All what he needs to do to bite, and this pain will be stopping. So the officers and the soldiers said, maybe it's something wrong with the dog, with the dogs. Go get me another set of 3 dogs. The another set of 3 dogs sit in the same position, but the middle dog took a step forward and he licked my face. The officers and the soldiers got the same message that I got, that maybe I'm alone, but I'm not lonely.
Maybe I'm alone, but I'm not lonely. The implication being that the Lord was with him, even in that prison cell, the prison called hell on earth, and even before these dogs that were trained killers in the hands of these interrogators who were really instruments of torture for this tyrannical government in Egypt. What do you say about this? There's something in the Christian story about suffering that is unique. Most of the world says suffering is bad and should be avoided at all costs. And, we should prevent our suffering and the suffering of those around us. And I like that idea. That's fundamentally true. But when we are subjected to suffer, something in the Christian psyche or worldview is triggered to rely more heavily and more in a full-fledged sort of faithful sense on Christ. And it's in those most desperate moments that Christ seems to do his most powerful work. And this was true in the Old and New Testament as well. I mean, his saga with these 2 sets of 3 dogs coming in to, have their way with him, it's reminiscent of something. If anybody knows their Bible, it's Daniel in the lion's den all over again, where God shut the mouths of those lions and they just laid down and took a nap next to the one that they were meant to devour, Daniel, God's servant. And in this case, we have Majed. As he told the story with such incredible lucid detail, it's like, how can anybody deny that this man lived through this and he remembers little things like the dogs sort of struggling to maintain their balance as they were taking the beatings for not doing their job. It's an amazing story. And what we have here is one more example of what used to be said among Christians in the early days of the church as it was exploding in its growth and influence throughout the Roman Empire, was that the blood of the martyrs is the seedbed of the church. The blood of the martyrs is the seedbed of the church. It's out of these stories that, shockingly enough, the church has grown. You would think, logically, that people hearing about stuff like this happening to Christians would be somewhat of a deterrent to their joining the ranks. But it seems to be, for whatever reason, supernatural perhaps, it seems to be the case that the more Christians are put to the test, the more testimonies we offer to the world about God's provision in times of desperate measures, in desperate situations, the more you hear these stories, the more people come to faith in Christ. That's the case with Majed. It was this experience that launched him into ministry and led him to be called Reverend now. And now he travels the world sharing the gospel and setting captives free. And tens of thousands of people have been touched by this man and his story. Now, Americans and Christians in particular living in this culture, we don't know what this is like. I would say it's partially because we have a society that's set up on Judeo-Christian values and we don't tend to persecute people who have minority views. But the dark side of that comfort we have is we've decided that it's persecution whenever Starbucks cups say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas.
Do you realize that Starbucks wanted to take Christ and Christmas off of their brand new cups? That's why they're just plain red.
We decided that it's persecution, whenever we have to wear a mask to church for a while or whatever. And that stuff's uncomfortable, and it might be indicative of real persecution that's coming down the pike. But here and now, we don't face this sort of thing. But what we also don't face in the American church is explosive, supernatural growth, because we don't have these kinds of stories to tell. And so if you're a Christian and you're watching and you're not sure what to make of this, like you're not living in a place where it's illegal to believe what you believe, I understand all of that. I would just suggest maybe we pray for God to challenge us, to challenge our comfort zones, to pull us out of those comfort zones and to let us struggle however he sees fit. Let us suffer for the sake of the gospel, and without becoming, having a victim mentality, letting the Holy Spirit move in those times so that he can do his best work, even when we are maybe at our worst, like Majed was in that prison cell. All right, we're going to keep going and talk about comfort zones versus conflict zones around the world, as some Christians are living in places like Majed grew up in, and others are living in places like I grew up in. And what are some of the distinctions and important things to keep in mind?
The problem here is there is miracles happening all around us, but we're living in a comfort zone. There is the world divided to two zones, conflict zone and a comfort zone. And the more that you're in a conflict zone, you see God's miracle. You understand the miracle. You understand what is persecution. You understand how the church was built on the blood of the martyrs. But when you are in a comfort zone, you count on your credit card, your bank account, and your car and your vehicle, and you count on your airplanes, and you count on your suits and your seats. And when you're in the conflict zone, you're holding the fire in your hand. That's why I always tell people, don't underestimate persecution. Christians like nails, the harder you hit them on the head, they go deeper and deeper and deeper. So never underestimate the gift of persecution. Our churches in Canada or United States or Europe, they have one day, in November, I think, they call it the Day of Persecuted Christians, something like that.
Yeah.
One day, Pastor, one day in the year, there is persecution. One persecuted Christian every 3 minutes. And they are celebrating. I don't want to call it remembering. Remembering. One day of the year. Our churches today is more preaching about prosperity and healing, which is all promises that I'm not saying. But the Bible also promised persecution. Yeah. The Bible said, if you will follow me, you will carry a cross on your shoulder. They will persecute you because you are following me. And today, the lesson that North America need to know, persecution will come. Persecution is already in North America. And persecution will use politically correctness to destroy or try to destroy our nation. This is basically what's happened, and we see this every day.
What do you wish that comfortable churches, Christians in the comfort zones, would see or learn from Christians living in conflict zones?
Never give up and never compromise. I saw compromising every single day. I saw that the churches, because they are worried about their status or tribal status, or they are worried about if they will lose members or not lose members, they will compromise. And I would like to see them more active. I remember my pastor used to go outside in the street, swiping the street and cleaning the streets. I remember him knocking on the doors of his followers. Do you need something? Can I help you? Right now in our churches, and please, I hope that nobody will take it that I'm criticizing anything. I'm
No,
just
it's fine.
telling you what I saw. Now we build concerts because we want to invite the people in. Let's try the vice versa. Let's go out and let's see how amazing that will make difference in the society.
This is the hardest part for me to hear in our interview, because I am really centrally situated in a comfort zone of Christianity. I'm in a comfort zone, in a comfort zone, in a comfort zone. I'm in one of the wealthiest parts of Houston, Texas, in the United States of America in 2025. I can't imagine an easier place to be a Christian than the place I call home. And Majed's point is so well taken and articulated perfectly, that it's like a poison that infects us when we allow ourselves to get into this model of seeing the church as a place people, we're supposed to invite people to or welcome people into, and like we build our big cathedrals or our big auditoriums and have our big show and y'all come to church. And that's just a mentality that's set in, and it's so comfortable because there's good outputs of it. You can count the butts in seats, you can feel good about the dollars in the plate, and you can have a really nice, well-run organization that everybody's proud of. As wonderful as that is, that's not all the church is supposed to be. That's not even half of what the church is supposed to be. And so part of being faithful followers of Jesus is getting out of our comfort zones, going outside into the world, being of service, even if it's inconvenient and uncomfortable to do so. And this is something, I'll be real honest, as I have gotten more comfortable, I've done less and less of, and I've encouraged the Christians around me to do less and less of, because it just, the inertia sets in, I guess. And I'm convicted about that, because, I think when you look at the Bible, everybody seems to believe that Jesus had it out for rich people. A lot of deconstructing former Christians will say, well, Christianity is just a bunch of rich white people, and the Bible is always calling out rich people for being, on the wrong side of things. But what I think they're missing is that it's not that it's evil to be rich. It's that it's easier to be evil when you're rich. It's easier to fall for the devil's tricks whenever you have all of these levels of security between you and your daily bread that you ask God for in the Lord's Prayer. And so, if you've got the bank accounts and the, retirement fund and the cars and house, everything, it just creates a false sense of security. That's why when the rich young ruler came to Jesus and said, I want to get saved, and Jesus basically said, follow the commands of the law. And he said, I'm already doing that, but I know something's missing. And so Jesus said, if you want to be perfect, sell all you have and give it to the poor, and then come follow me. And the rich guy was like, I'm out, because his wealth was too important to him. Elsewhere, Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven, which is a really stark and arresting teaching for those of us who are on the wealthier side of things. But right after that, Jesus said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. So it's not that Jesus has it out for rich people or that God hates wealthy, comfortable people. I think it's that he has compassion on those of us who've fallen for the trick that we've got this, we've got enough, we're fine as we are, and we'll just keep going with our, all of our security and comfort and wealth. I think he wants us to be liberated from that. So how do we get out of that? How do we escape that nasty cycle of wealth and comfort? Well, I think Majed would say it's by listening to our brothers and sisters around the world who are experiencing the other side of things, who are experiencing these conflict zones, who are living in this state of suffering, and by getting out into our own cities where people are still struggling just to get by, and people need a friend, they need a good neighbor, they need somebody to get out of their comfort zones to come and love them the way God first loved them and all of us. It starts with a prayer. Lord, shake me up today. Show me who to serve. Show me how to get uncomfortable for you. And more and more listening to people like Majed instead of some of the celebrity preachers, with the high dollar wardrobes and the biceps and the flashy, online following and all of that, and really listening to the witness of Christians around the world. All right, let's keep going. How does it actually happen that One Free World International enters in and rescues the people like you've described? What are the mechanisms? Do you have to send a team in to physically remove them? Is that how it works?
We send a team to rescue them, and I am on the top of the team. Of course, we have to, let's say, cooperate with our different intelligence institutions in our countries to make sure that there is no conflict of interest. And we have local teams, we have international teams, and we found a way, like with the Yazidis, we cooperated with the Kurds on the ground. And we was able to enter ISIS territory and buy these girls. And we was able to bring them here. So they don't know that we're risking them. They thought that we're just here to buy them. It wasn't,
Wow.
It was like a market, Pastor. And this operation almost bankrupted One Free World International. It cost us $3 million. I had to take a second mortgage on my home. I had to max my credit cards. But we did it. We did it by the grace of God.
Where did that money go? Just who do you have to pay? I mean, you might not be able to talk about this, but who do you have to pay off or to satisfy in order to have access?
We don't pay money to a terrorist organization, but what we do, we buy materials.
Yeah.
Like, let's say, I don't want to go through the details because
Sure,
it's
I
the
understand.
podcast is different. But we exchange, but we don't give them cash money because this money can be used to hurt more people. So
Yeah.
we don't give cash, we give the materials that they need. And after that, we exchange the girls.
What happens
Not
to the
military
girls?
materials.
What happens to the people you rescue? In this case, these girls after you rescue them.
We put them in a safe homes to receive some healing and to reconnect them with their families step by step. And after that, they are released to their family within 3 to 6 months, depend on their improvement.
This is the part of the interview where he's talking about what his organization does to help people suffering persecution all over the world. And I think it's important, a couple of things. First of all, he's in a hotel room in Israel as we're talking because he's there supporting people that are suffering religious persecution in Gaza and as well as in Hebron, where Hezbollah and that part of the war is broken out. This man he's not a bureaucrat. He's not a figurehead in an organization. He goes to these places to be the tip of the spear and to be the lead negotiator, and he'll go inside of these places to set people free. And not just Christians, by the way. He mentioned working with the Yazidis to get the Yazidi girls that had been captives under the Kurds, I believe. And so he's helping rescue people of all different faiths. And a lot of the people that he helps rescue do, in fact, open their hearts to Christ as a result of being rescued by him. But that's not always the case. And that's not even the number one reason that he's doing this. He's doing this because Jesus rescued him. And that's the gospel. Jesus rescues us, and then he sets us free to rescue as many others as possible. And that's not just from persecution and sex slavery, which is what the girls that he rescued in this story were probably destined for had he not stepped in and his organization not intervened. But also, Jesus rescues us from all kinds of sin and addiction, all kinds of vices and problems we get ourselves into. And then once he does, he sets us free to go out and rescue the world as well. And I live in this world just like y'all do, and I see people living in bondage and captivity of all kinds and desperate to be free from it, but unsure about how to break free. And I just want everybody that's watching this to hear me say that this is the business of Jesus Christ in the world. Salvation in Christ is not merely spiritual. Spirit is part of it. Being liberated in your spirit is part of it. But Jesus came to liberate your whole self from whatever captivity you've found yourself in, whether it was a pit that you fell in accidentally or somebody else threw you in against your will. However you got where you are, Jesus wants to save you from it. And once he does, he wants to send you out into the world to save others from whatever pits they're in and however they got there. This is the heart of God. That's what Majed El Shafie shows us, not just by telling his story of his own personal past, but through the work that he's doing day in and day out. And I encourage everybody watching to look up Majed's work, One Free World International, and offer him your prayers and maybe even your financial support if you can. This is the coolest aspect of Christianity in the world. I love church services and the way we do Christianity. This is like Mission Impossible stuff. He can't even talk about his strategies because that might get him in trouble, and he's trying to thread the needle of legality and not lining the pockets of evil, corrupt people, while he's also setting their captives free. So powerful stuff here, and I'm so grateful for Majed sharing this with us. Let's look at one more clip now.
I want to tell everybody that's listening to us, you heard the story and you saw all the above. Maybe we will meet, maybe we will not. But if you don't remember anything of me and the pastor spoke about today, I would really love to encourage you to remember this one last message, as long as you live. From my life, doesn't matter what you are facing in your home, in your health, in your marriage, in your children, in your work. Just remember this one thing. After every night, there is new morning carrying new day. After every storm, there is sunshine. And after every persecution, there is victory in Jesus' name. Don't give up. Don't give up. Our enemy have very strong weapon, it's true. Our enemy have very strong army, it's true. But we have the Lord Almighty. I promise you that they can kill the believers, but they cannot kill the belief of our hearts. They can kill the dreamer, but nobody can kill the dream. The best is yet to come. Never give up. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Pastor.
This whole conversation was so inspiring. And if you're a Christian, I hope you heard that encouragement to just be reminded that this world can come after it can come after the faithful. It can eliminate some of the faithful even. It can persecute and imprison and kill off faithful people, but it cannot kill the faith that is within us. And we, by the grace of God, have been called into something that's bigger than us. We've been called into discipleship and worship of the one true God in Jesus Christ, who is like no other God or religious figure the world's ever seen. If you're not a Christian, I want you to know what you're worth to God. You're worth it all. You're worth it all to God. And the world might say your worth is boiled down to your net worth or your relationships, your network perhaps, or your success in this world. That is a drop in the bucket compared to what you're actually worth in the eyes of God, as evidenced by his commitment to come and rescue you and find you in your darkest place and know you and set you free from the chains that bind you. He loves you more than you know. And every one of us, Christian or otherwise, is worshiping somebody. Some of us worship the self. A lot of us are worshiping ourselves these days. A lot of us are building worldviews that support who we want to be in our own right. And then there's other religions, and Majed addressed the differences between Islam and Christianity. There's plenty of other religions to compare Christianity to. The point is, everybody's worshiping something. Everybody's worshiping somebody. And if you're not a Christian yet, I would challenge you to ask who it is you're worshiping. And then take that person, if it's you, if it's Muhammad, if it's Allah, whoever it is that you're worshiping, and compare that person to Jesus Christ. Not who you've heard he is, but look at who he really is. The heart of God laid bare on a cross so that the whole world might know the extent to which the Almighty Creator would go to know and be known by the people he made and the people that he loves. And that includes you. And that's what you're really worth. I hope you hear that and that you know that today. I'm grateful again to Majed El Shafie. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel before you leave, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks as always for watching.